Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you today to another Credit Safe webinar. It is my pleasure to be with you and to host this. My name is Nathan Kalb, and each week I get to join you as we put together these webinars and do our best to bring you topics, to bring you speakers, to bring you information that is relevant, timely, and useful to you in the B2B community. I'm very excited today to talk about our topic and to get into this. But before we do, I want to make sure that you understand kind of how things work if you're new and joining us for the first time. So this is designed to be interactive. I'm going to be talking with our speaker here in just a moment, and then we're going to be able to take questions from you, the audience. So the way you do that is very simple. Go down to the bottom of your screen. There will be a little text bubble that says Q&A. Go ahead and you can make comments. You can ask questions. Obviously, keep things on topic, please. But of anything that's going on here, you'll be able to do all of that right there in that text bubble area, that Q&A area. I'll be monitoring that the whole time. Now, we will aggregate all those questions and take them at the end, but be assured I'm paying attention, and I will take that, and then I will give these to our speaker at the end of our little interview time. Speaking of the person that's joining us today, Adrian Schurst is the president of WorldBox Business Intelligence, an independent organization specializing in providing information and business intelligence across the globe. They have operating units in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. And Adrian's focus is managing the strategic implementation of the group worldwide. He is also a senior partner of Graham Associates AG, which is a Swiss consulting company which provides financial and consulting services to international companies that are doing business in Switzerland. So, Adrian, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have you.
You're very welcome, and hello to everyone.
I'm excited to see this, that your background, your setup here is going to help answer the first question I have for you, which is simply, we're talking about Southeast Asia, and that's a kind of an ambiguous term to some. So why don't you give me an idea of what countries are we talking about here?
Yes, that's a very good point to clarify at the beginning, because it creates a lot of misunderstandings if that's not the case. Mm-hmm. The size of the area is enormous. By countries with size of population, I will list them. This is sure. Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, and Brunei.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, and we can see right behind you most of those that and kind of where they're located in the world and everything.
Right. That was the idea. Yes.
Right. Which is great. I love it. That's great. So, now that we kind of know what we're talking about here, and folks have an idea of what countries we're dealing with, maybe they did, and you just helped me out, but how has the economy been shifting over the last 6 months, basically 2020 in this region?
The COVID-19 has affected all of the countries. Mm-hmm. Some of them, as you're probably all aware, some of them more severe than others. Some of them have clamped down early in the situation. Others have let it slide, like Indonesia, which had a lot of indecision before they did anything. Mm-hmm. So I think the economies have changed. I think the key one that's hurt the most has been Thailand. By the tourism industry is obviously, as everyone knows, you can't fly, you can't travel, the hotels are closed, etc.
Right.
Interesting also, Cambodia has been emerging quite strongly as a destination of the Chinese tourists in recent years, and that has also stopped. Yes, everything is depressed or being depressed. But more or less everybody's been in the same situation. I think one country that's really stood out here because of the way they've reacted rapidly was Vietnam. And they're probably a star in looking at this whole situation.
Okay.
Singapore has tried very hard, but it's not all roses there because of their large migrant population. And as you know, various cells broke out there, which sort of disrupted their way of doing things. But nevertheless, they have not suffered as hard
Okay.
as some of the others. Yeah.
Okay. And with that being the case, are you hearing about changes from the businesses there in either the way they're doing business or what's happening within their businesses or anything like that?
Yeah, I think again, this is something we're all very familiar with. Is obviously this area is a production area for the supply chain distribution, right. And both production and logistics and distribution have been interrupted quite severely. One bright star in the whole thing, and I don't know if anybody has heard that, is an innovative solution that Samsung took. Is they produce a lot in Vietnam, and to get the product out to Korea, South Korea to produce, they actually arranged airlifting fairly early on in the process.
Oh wow! Okay.
On the other side, a lot of the heavy freight is shipped with freighters, and many of them are stuck right now because they cannot change their crews. Many people are stuck on board for months. They cannot fly, they cannot go home. So the transport of these type of goods has also been disrupted because of that.
Right, okay.
What I've also seen though also is there have been fast positive developments in like e-commerce. With people being stuck at home, the purchasing, all sorts of types of e-commerce transactions have increased quite rapidly. You can look at the statistics there. Okay. Yeah, more or less. I think in many countries they're dependent on migrant workers, and these people have been they're not able to move. They are kept in the country in which they were working. Right. Another areas where in the Philippines, they do a lot of service work for U.S. organizations, right down to accounting services. We all know about the call centers, but many of them have been laid off and been sent home because the situation in the States, the business is slowed or stopped, and therefore it's not been, they've suffered in the same way.
Okay. Yeah, kind of that ripple effect across the world.
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, you've been talking about this. Is all of this just a kind of a result or an impact from the pandemic, or were there other forces at work here too?
No, actually, I'll come to that later. But I think the situation between China and the USA is actually played into the hand of these countries.
Sure.
For various reasons. There was a trend already in advance that various manufacturing was being moved out of China because it's getting too expensive there also to produce today. This is one of the reasons for Vietnam's growth in recent years.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few other things, but one of the positives for this region is this situation between China and the USA today.
Okay. Well, I know we're going to get into that in a minute or two here in a little bit, but with the things going on with the pandemic, with COVID-19 and everything, is there any type of trends that we're seeing across this that we are looking at possibly in the next few months? I don't know, reopening or flattening of the curve or any of that type of stuff going on?
Yes, I think the supply chains still need to be fed, and as industries in other countries are recovering, they need this the materials or the components of to be able to produce. It's also very interesting how much Europe is dependent on these areas as well for their production. So I think many of them are going to get back into action as soon as they possibly can. The freight logistics, the airlines are actually benefiting from this because everything that you cannot move with a ship is now being moved by aircraft. And quite a few airlines have remodeled their airplanes that they can carry more freight.
Okay.
And I have quite an interesting story on Ethiopian Airlines, who are the key airline in Africa, and they're doing. I think they've refitted about 30 planes, and they're doing
Okay.
a lot of traffic between Asia and other parts of the world. So they're ones who are
Ah,
clever to reacted to this. I'm not sure how the others have,
right.
but I do know that it's the capacity is being filled there with the air freight lifting.
Okay, well that makes sense. I mean, a great move there by the Ethiopian Airlines to do that. But that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't even have thought, with the freight lines of the ships being down, that you just bring in the planes. Let's change up how we do
As much
things.
as you can, right?
Right, right. I'm sure there's some things that can't go on the airplanes,
Yeah,
but
sure, sure.
as much as you possibly can, that makes complete sense.
I,
Um,
I think something that might disrupt this whole thing or slow it down
mhm.
is the second shutdowns, which are happening in some cases. But
Right.
but all in all, it's going to come back as fast as it's physically possible.
Okay.
Except for tourism, I don't think we're going to see a great recovery in that this year, and we'll see what next year brings.
Okay. And as you said, a lot of these countries are dependent on that area, that industry for revenue.
Correct, correct. I mean, the ricochet effects in that is enormous. It's going to affect the economies quite considerably, and
Mm.
I think Thailand is going to continue to suffer um, in the next 18 months or so. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. Now, as we say that, and it seems kind of odd to think about this, but when there's these type of issues and problems, there's always opportunity, and
Always.
that means a chance for American companies, because we're focused here in the U.S. To come into that region, but we in America like to think that the rest of the countries in the world often are just like us, and that's not necessarily true. So in this region, what are a few things that we as Americans tend to do there, and we just do it wrong? We get it wrong when we do, and I'm not talking about traveling necessarily, not
No,
a
no,
tourist,
no.
but like as a business when we come in there. What is that?
Okay, I must first say you're not alone there. The Australians are also not
Well, it's good
the
to know
best,
that we have
with,
some
with
company in
no
all of that.
disrespect to anybody. Okay, I think um, companies have struggled to execute in Asia for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
the biggest the core, I think, of the problems is their relationship with culture and
Okay.
their willingness to change, to adapt and change to the culture, to operate in an Asian environment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think it depends if the American business has had previous experiences, maybe in other Asian countries. Asia is really very different from country to country,
Okay.
and one of the main things is the culture, and you have to learn how not to be so direct if you want. Sometimes you have to assess the situation before you make your comments, etc. I think one big thing is to understand the legal system, because they are really very different from country to country. If you look at
Mm.
Thailand, you cannot own property in 100% in your own name. You cannot own a company. You need to work with local partners.
Okay.
Um, you need to collect the facts locally per country to understand. And this means using the legal firms that you are maybe connected with through your own lawyers and the accounting firms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they are really quite key to helping you to get that base structure right. Um, and and one of the things that one tries to do is if you want to a degree the American way, is you've got a structure, you have a traditionally deployed this structure, it's sort of standardized across and it works. But
Right.
when you go into these markets, it doesn't work, and you have to have the intuition and the listening power to be able to adapt it.
Mm-hmm.
And many, it's not just smaller companies, it's also multinationals. They are struggling to develop successful strategies
Mm.
in emerging markets. But you have to listen, I think, and you have to adapt. It's obviously you have to trust, but finding the right partner to trust is also maybe not the easiest thing in the world either.
Right.
Certain things just don't exist in some of these marketplaces. And we're looking at Indonesia very heavily right now. And one of the things here we find is the market research to give you reliable base information on customer preferences, how you can adjust your products to the marketplace. It's just not there. So you need to be able to spend time in investigating that and finding a way to get it right and I say to be able to assess people's willingness to pay you for your product or service. Because if you get it wrong, you're not going to sell anything. But if you spend the time on that, and maybe you have to do it yourselves because you're not going to find a capable organization like that in this specific country to do it for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're just tips. They're really not negatives, okay?
Sure. Things to keep in mind, right? That we should do as we look at that.
Yeah.
And I mean, with that in mind, if we're looking into that area and we're looking at that, how are the relations right now between Southeast Asia and those businesses and American businesses? I mean, have they changed due to stuff going on in the world? Have they changed due to the pandemic? I mean, what are we seeing there?
Honestly, I don't think really Southeast Asia, the relationships cross-border have really changed. I think everybody's suffering from the same problems, if you want, at the moment.
Sure.
But coming out of it, as you said before, there's a lot of positive opportunity. I think and I'll talk a little bit about it afterwards. It's in the region itself, yeah.
Okay. So has there been any change? You were talking about China earlier, or go ahead and expound on that, right now, if you like, just kind of what's going on there.
China is also quite clever in what it's doing, but also because of their base costs are rising so strong, they're not able to produce at the competitive prices they have done before. But they are cross-bordering their knowledge and their factories into like Vietnam. One country that I think you should keep a very good eye on is Myanmar. And I'll talk a little bit about it afterwards. But there's a shift that they're doing themselves, but there's also a requirement from the US side to fulfill these supply chains that we talked about before. Right. So this is bringing the power to this area through these needs, if you want.
Right.
Especially those that are land connected to China.
Sure. But in general, you're saying that the relations really haven't changed, either due to the political environment or the especially due to the pandemic, just because everybody's hurting right now.
Exactly. And out of it, I think, is going to come a lot of opportunity. Yeah.
Well, I'll ask the question then, if you would, with opportunity. We've mentioned that a couple of times. What do you see as the opportunities there? I mean, if you're a company, or if you had a U.S. company right now that was looking to expand into this region, whether to find new suppliers, distributor, whether to sell into the region, whatever you decide you want to look at, what opportunities do you see right now?
I think, first of all, it depends very much in which business sector you are in.
Okay.
So what I say doesn't apply to all.
Sure.
And the people know their own sectors very well, and they know what they will fit. The second point I would like to make, two other comments, is the cross-border development within Asia was growing fast before the COVID virus. And now it's a great opportunity as we come out of this. You're going to see it growing consistently faster, and I think, than any other area in the world in the next 12 to 18 months, or maybe longer than that.
Okay.
It's also service sector, it's software, it's a lot of online business growth. I mean, you've seen some very big names come out of the Asia Pacific area that are now world names, world brand names, and this is going, I think, to continue.
Okay.
And the other point is, it's a journey. And it's not something that you should look at as a short term in and out. It's something that is going to take longer. And the companies, the foreign companies that are successful in Asia today have probably been there 10 to 15 years now. They made their business plans and investments work, and they had to adapt to the opportunities that were given to them in these countries. And also work in many cases with local businesses who are also now quite large in this respect. So I think partnership again is important, and the ability, you must be prepared in your mind to put into question all the things that you think are the right things to do today when you go into this environment. You take the good things with you and you adapt as you go. That is the only road to success, in my opinion.
I think that would be probably true anywhere. I don't think that's just
Sure,
here. I think that's good words
sure.
to live by in personal and in professional life. There.
May I just add too? But maybe a thought is, however, maybe the biggest risk of all is not doing anything at all there.
Right. Right.
Because if you don't try, who knows what's waiting for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
Countries, Vietnam, as I said before, is replacing the sources of supply chains.
Mm-hmm.
Singapore is picking up on the situation in Hong Kong, and we haven't really talked about that.
Right. Right.
And they're pushing hard on that. Japan is also trying in the service sector. However, I'd say don't give up on Hong Kong, because stay there, maybe deviate, but I don't think it would be wise to move totally away from Hong Kong and move to Singapore as a preference, because they're again two different cultures. Mm-hmm. They both have their positives and their negatives. We have offices in both locations, and we have people in both locations. So I would say think carefully of that, but I think Singapore is going to be a bigger hub than it is now for various businesses.
Sure.
As I said before, Myanmar is developing rapidly. I've been there a number of times. I was there before there were mobile phones there. I remember the year I was there, we were giving the licenses out, so the communication was really not good. And I was been back several times, and what I've noted is there are a tremendous number of young people speaking English today, fluent English, which was not the case 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And there's obviously it's a rich country in many respects, but I think that's something to keep an eye on going forward.
Sounds like there's some great opportunity there.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the emerging, it's interesting, I read a study the other day, one of the emerging opportunities in Southeast Asia that are showing the most promise is in the healthcare. And healthcare, but using electronic media for this.
Okay.
Now, I don't know the details of all of it. It's just something I picked up in the study, but I thought it was quite an interesting fact, if you want.
Okay. So like virtual healthcare.
Yeah, I think,
yes. Okay. Yes. Remote and everything, which we're all becoming a little bit more familiar with due to this pandemic right now.
Correct.
I understand. Any other opportunities before I take a couple of these questions that we've got?
I probably could find some more, but let's take the questions there.
Okay. We do have a couple of questions, and folks keep asking. No problem asking them through. We do have time, so go ahead. And I'm going to kind of rephrase this a little bit. You mentioned that there's some stoppages right now in distribution and everything like that. Do you have any sense of how much time it will take for those to be made up once things start reopening? So if they reopen tomorrow, it's going to take, 2 months for things to really start flowing again.
I think we have to split that between anything you can airlift and anything that is heavy ship freight.
Sure, feel free.
I think the ship freight issue is going to take longer because we still have the issues with the airlines. We still have the issues with travel. Crews are from maybe poorer countries, and being able to get them out and travel and restart this it's probably going to take longer. I think that you can move in another way is already taking place.
Okay.
When a manufacturing plant start, I think you just have to look at what happened with China. I mean, they got started pretty fast, and they were able. We were in dire need of medical supplies, for instance, and these various equipment that was needed, and
Right.
and they were able to bring that up relatively fast. So,
Right.
I think the type of people and the type of countries that you're dealing with in these manufacturing areas are very, very much aware of this speed they need to apply to get this up and running. So as soon as the authorities permit the factories to start production, I think you have a good logistics system in place, and it would be relatively fast.
Okay. Okay. So next question here, are there any specific things that folks need to keep in mind that credit managers specifically, so extending credit and understanding credit terms, need to keep in mind when doing business in Southeast Asia?
I think it's the line of business that company is in.
Okay.
Is very key. Like medical supplies or anything in this direction, or pharmaceutical, has really had a growth in this last few months. If it's other supply lines, then you have to be aware very much of that sector. And then, is the government supporting it or is it not? This is factors that lie behind that business getting back into business. Is it guaranteed certain funds? There are these type of issues that you have to take into account, probably at a higher level by sector, and then down to the company itself.
Okay.
But you have to look at the facts around the company at the end of the day.
And I'm going to ask a follow-up question to that is purely mine, so folks, please indulge me. Do we see a lot of government support or backing of these companies, especially now with the pandemic?
Not so much in these areas.
Okay.
You see it in Europe, which you've heard about,
Right.
but not so much in these areas. So if it's a larger part of a larger group, then probably the chances are that it will survive this phase are higher. If it's an independent, smaller organization, then you have to be very careful, I think.
Sure. Okay. And we have one more question here, and folks, we do have a little bit of time if you want to add another one here. But this last question that I have right now is, you had mentioned partners, having partners in the particular country or the region or what have you. Do you suggest using a organic company, a company from that country, or one, and I think this might be a hard question because you happen to have one of these companies that is based elsewhere and has, kind of a more global spread to it?
Oh, tough one to answer.
Right. I'm going to ask it, but I didn't say it would be easy.
There's a lovely word in German. It's called Jein, which means yes and no.
Okay.
It depends. I think if you've got certain partners there that have been on the ground for quite a while and are knowledgeable about cross-border international business, it's maybe an advantage for you because they are familiar with these aspects. Sure. If yes, it's very true. If you partner with somebody who has no experience in international business before, then you have a mentality or a cultural challenge that both of you have to find a bridge to get over. That makes it a little more difficult, but it doesn't mean to say it doesn't work. In various cases, it can work very well. I think as a human being, if the chemistry fits between you, but you have to spend some time to find that out,
sure, then
it could work. We have issues. We've got some businesses that we work with. One in Thailand, where I've known them for about 20 years, and we've now started to work closer together because we have the technology and they don't. But they have the local knowledge, which we don't have. So that's an example of how it could work. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great answer to that. And that is actually all the questions we have right now, but I appreciate all of your answers there, Adrian. I want to make sure folks can get in touch with you. So what I'm going to do, and we had talked about this ahead of time, I'm going to point them to LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn, and they can send a connection request to you there. And I will also link to your company email and everything like that on our landing page, which will lead me to the next thing, folks. We make sure that we record all of these and then post these within 24 hours afterwards on our landing pages. You will get an email from me to you, specifically sending you the link to the recording to give you all this information. And you can go ahead and get information on Adrian, on Worldbox, on me, on CreditSafe, what have you, all from that email. So just be looking for that in your email inbox the next couple of days. And just to give you a heads up, we do have 2 upcoming webinars next week. The first one is on Tuesday, July 28th, which is getting value out of a periodic portfolio review with the managing director for CreditSafe USA, Mark Edwards. And the second is Thursday, the 30th of July, which is creating company culture while working remote with the CEO of CreditSafe Group, Cato Syverson. So super fun ones next week. Great speakers, just like we had today. I'm super thankful, Adrian, for you coming on, for your expertise. I appreciate you being here. So thanks for that.
Thank you too for inviting me.
Absolutely. And folks, thanks for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.